The student has finally become the master.
Finally.
So that I think that was the whole idea of this game as for me, because I felt like for once Michael Arteta just make a big statement in the Premier League.
And for the first half, it was you did feel like City was going to get the best of it.
Yeah.
In that second half, it felt the momentum shifted, and it wasn't necessarily because City were playing poorly. It's that you almost felt like they were okay with getting a draw.
Yeah.
They kind of just sat back and said, "Okay, we'll take the 1 point. That's fine." And it felt like the Arsenal guys were more willing to take a loss, than just shut down and accept a draw. And despite it being my club, being neutral, I like that style. I like that mentality. Not all the time, because that's how you end up moving down the table. But in big situations, I always prefer a side to take those chances, be willing to pay the price.
Yeah.
Because selfishly, it makes the game more interesting, and because it's not a rigged or a predetermined sport, you shouldn't play unsafe just to be entertaining for the fans. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I happen to like that play style. I like that kind of it's almost a gamble.
Yeah.
It's a measured gamble. They're not pulling themselves out of position and making stupid choices, but you can tell that they're really wanting to put that foot forward, and if they get caught, they're willing to accept that.
Yeah.
And that's okay at the end. It's not okay, but they're willing to live with that rather than saying, I wonder if we could have gotten more out of this game.
Well,
I like that personally.
when beating great teams, these super teams, usually what I like to go for is a situation where it's not 1-0. I want to see total dominance. But looking at the event that went on and how each team is set up, they lack a lot of players that are injured. So, but this was more of a tactical game. It's just how Arteta proved to be really tactical, playing against another mastermind, usually called the master of the chess in modern football, Pep Guardiola, right? So one thing that I saw when they started, they didn't overcommit. That's what Arsenal did. Not attacking, not over pressuring like they used to, that crazy press, but they didn't also just sit back.
Yeah.
And it was the game management from a manager's point of view, and even from the players, were really, really well done. You can see that he had to predetermine or dictate the game from the sideline, and you can see Arsenal just playing more of a managed game. We do when we can. Yep. We attack when we can. We pass when we see open lanes. We don't overdo it. So that was really good. The other thing is, last year they did not have Declan Rice.
Yep.
They didn't have Saliba. So Guardiola, because he doesn't have Rodri, KDB, they didn't go wide as they like to go wide.
Yeah.
It was more of, let's get a little tight in the middle and try to press or try to get open lanes in the middle. So in the middle attack on the final third of Arsenal. But then Arsenal really saw that what they did. They shut down everything, and it's really good because really you can really see by the fact that someone like Haaland didn't have silent all game. Saliba just pocketing him.
Yep.
And Saliba played so great. I mean, this guy had 100% duel won. He had 76 touches. He had 97% accuracy, pass accuracy, and he had 5 ball recoveries. So that just show you how great they managed the middle and definitely defended as a group overall. And they did that. Now, even in substitution, Arteta usually not good at substitution, but the substitution was really good because all the 4 people that were football players that were substituted, the goal all came from these 4 guys. Mm-hmm. So
he noticed
it was well managed.
He noticed that Walker was getting the best of Trossard. Zinchenko is a little bit light on defense, so Tomiyasu coming in makes absolute sense. And I do think that one of the big decisions, and by the way, you said Saliba wasn't there last season. He was.
Oh, he was. Yeah.
He was, but the melding of Gabriel and Saliba's, it feels a little bit stronger this year.
Yeah.
Despite the defense not feeling as tight overall, they've at least proven that they have to work together. And Gabriel and Raya had some miscommunication at the back.
Yes.
But one of the big things that I think really made the difference was Jorginho being in the middle.
Yeah.
And Kai Havertz not being in the start. Kai Havertz did play well. He was the one that ended up laying off the ball for Martinelli.
Yeah.
He felt a bit more forward moving, a little bit more active.
Yeah.
Once he got there, but and Jorginho is not the best defender, so having him in the middle of the park was not a way of saying we're going to make sure that we close down and kind of create a triangle between the two center backs to ensure that Haaland doesn't get over the top. They didn't have to do that, but they needed somebody a little bit more active in the midfield, as opposed to when someone like Kai Havertz starts.
Yeah.
When he tries to float up forward, it feels like it's a two-man midfield. With that person that goes forward, not really trying to get over the, to chase down balls over the top or anything. So you kind of have that odd man out. It's almost like you're playing with 10 men at times. I think that Jorginho, despite not doing anything overwhelmingly crazy, he allowed Declan Rice to feel a bit more safe and comfortable distributing the ball. As opposed to having nobody there, Jorginho was at least holding some things down and helping dictate the pace of the game. But yeah, once Martinelli came on for Trossard, you can tell it, the fresh legs, the pace, and the energy.
Yeah, Martinelli
wearing them down late
was just amazing.
Yeah, and at a certain point,
Mm-hmm.
even Kyle Walker couldn't quite cope with the quick acceleration.
Yeah.
And I
mean, you can really tell in the city team, Rodri really, his impact. You could see how impactful he is when he plays, because without Rodri, they have lost 3 games without Rodri. And that just shows you how important Rodri is for the team. Another thing will be the same. They did this in 2018 when Fernandinho was out, 2018-19 season. And they lost, I think, back-to-back games. And this was also a result of Fernandinho not being in. So the midfield, every time Pep has or loses one key player in the midfield, he tries to play tight. But this time around was different, because Arsenal understood that if he's playing tight, it means he's going to try to pass through the middle. And guess what? We're going to shut down the middle, and it's going to be difficult for you. And we're not going to overcommit to give you these extra spaces or these extra runs. Then we're just going to be in between the middle. So anytime we try to counter attack, we will set up our lower block every day. So the game was, in essence, the game was very well managed. Very well managed.
And then on top of it, you have your midfielder that basically was the main reason that your striker won the Golden Boot last year and broke all these records. He's out as well. So in the middle of the park, you're missing your kind of maestro that creates chances, and then your overwhelmingly well-rounded holding midfielder that dictates everything slightly behind the ball. You're missing them both. I think that Rico Lewis is great. He does need someone else with him that has an extremely special skill set in one direction. I think that Rico Lewis is a very well-rounded player. He does many things great, but he needs someone that does particular things very well. He either needs to be paired with Rodri, who can get behind the ball very well, or realistically, what I could see would be him playing well with Kevin De Bruyne.
Kovacic is really interesting, because this guy, the ref missed giving him a red card. I don't know how they did that, but that was amazing.
And then he fouls a couple minutes later.
Yeah,
that should have been another yellow. Since he somehow got 2 chances.
This guy is really amazing.
and they weren't exceptional bits of play. They weren't on. They weren't in moments that were very important to keep from conceding goals. They're very odd times for such questionable challenges. Dragging somebody down when they're on a breakaway for the red card, it's not always the best thing, but I understand. It's I get that. Or a very hard tackle and to prevent a very quick counter, I understand it as well. Both of those challenges were very curious in terms of what he thought was the positive outcome was going to be.
So for someone like City or Barcelona, what will be an ideal midfielder coming in? Would that be Xavi Simons? Are they going to try to go for Xavi Simons? How do you see him fit or playing, or just being a good fit in either City or Barcelona's squad.
Both kind of miss a little bit of pace.
Yeah.
And I think that Xavi Simons kind of he brings it in, especially City. They're really, you've got Kevin De Bruyne at 31.
Yeah.
Rodri's 29, 28.
21,
But
yeah.
Rodri was never neither of those guys were speed demons anyway. But these things happen. And so you have Kovacic, who is even less of a speed demon.
Yeah.
And I don't think that he's a bad player. I think that he had a pretty poor game, and I think that he kind of shows what he was at Chelsea as well, which is very good and good at most things. But I don't think that he's exceptional in any particular way. And I think to play at City, you have to be exceptional at least one thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So Xavi Simons could be interesting, and he is legitimately linked to both, right? Wasn't it? I think, or he is definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he could perform well at both sides. I would think the incentive would be to go to City because the midfield's a bit more in question, whereas Barcelona really seem like they want to nail Gavi down, and when he's fit, Pedri down. They really want to carry those guys into the future, whereas the majority of the midfielders at City are a little bit older. So if you play your cards right, you could be a part of that next project, as opposed to competing with the younger guys just the same that are already in the project, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I would say he could probably do pretty well at City. I don't know if Kovacic is going to hang around that long. I think that he was sort of an emergency purchase when Gundogan left.
Yeah.
But they also never never stated, because it would have been ridiculous if they did, that he was going to be a 1-for-1 trade or a 1-for-1 for Gundogan. Like, their skill sets are different anyway, and the level of quality as a player is very different too. But I could see Kovacic kind of being nowhere near the level of Calvin Phillips.
Yeah.
But 2 seasons, maybe out by the end of the third.
But how is Xavi Simons? I will have to look. How is his transition? How is he on transition? How is he on passing? All that will matter in terms of being the next midfielder coming in and just playing like Gundogan, or kind of like KDB. Just because you can tell, like, right now City has it's not obvious when they are overwhelming good when they're playing against teams that not tactically on their level, but when they play teams that are really technically and tactically on their level, it becomes apparent that there's not a good maestro in the middle to be the link-up guy from the defense to the attack. And you can see how there is a big drought on the attacking guys like Haaland to score or whatnot.
Yeah.
And I've always been saying that, somebody like Haaland, he's one of the best finisher, but he's not the player everybody seems to think he is. Just because you can score a goal when you have a good supply, don't mean you're that good.
Well, and they're playing a completely different style as well. They were very silky and smooth, but what made that so dangerous was the quickness.
Yeah.
That they were able to get those difficult passes threaded through.
But there's not someone at the moment that
there's no pace. There's no energy behind it. They still have good link up, but it shuts down because the other sides are able to cope. Because there's not as much energy behind it. And I think that Xavi Simons, I still need to do more research on him. I haven't been able to watch him as much as obviously because Barcelona and City have watched him.
Yeah, because if you think about somebody like KDB has a lot of long short range passes that when he does that from the back to the attack, it's so easy for, especially since he has his vision on the game. It's amazing what he does. He will thread through these long passes that will be easier. By the time you try to, or the opposition try to defend, Haaland will, that's how most of the goals came. Haaland will be in front of your goalkeeper.
And I think it's smart that they're going ahead, and I'm not saying that they can, should, or it's even possible to start playing like they did last season again. Because think about it this way. Kevin De Bruyne comes back in January more than likely. But you can't you can't build a team around him anymore because realistically he's just not going to be there that long.
Yeah.
So you're kind of using this time to figure out what works and what doesn't in his absence.
Yeah.
And then when he does come back in, you tailor the game to him as much as possible without sacrificing what you've built with everybody else. But if a Xavi Simons or anyone else comes in that is think about like if Caicedo had gone there instead. Great player, would probably give that energy in the midfield. Romeo Lavia would be like a lot of energy, a lot of quickness.
Yeah.
Different player though, and you're just not really going to find another midfielder. I can't think of any off the top of my head that are young enough to build a squad around her that has that same vision. That can, like who?
That's true.
Who is a midfielder that can thread those passes? That has that sight. That is under the age of 28. That you would say yes for the next 5 years, 6 years. Like we are building around you. Like that player doesn't really exist to me, at least.
Yeah.
And so they're doing the best they can and kind of accepting the premature death of Kevin De Bruyne.